are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, June 25th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, let's get into what we are going to discuss on the show today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the news yesterday that Brandon Aiyuk requested a meeting with the 49ers. So they met yesterday. There's no further details on it, but I just wanted to get into that, give my thoughts, and where things are kind of at, because I know Brandon Aiyuk has been someone that we've talked about a lot this offseason, so want to talk about that to start off the show. Then in the second part of the show, we will continue our schedule breakdowns. Today we will be going over the Houston Texans schedule, a team that I'm very high on going into the 2024 season, so we'll talk about that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about some comments made by Cam Newton on his podcast regarding the face of the NFL. So we'll get into that as well. Then in the fourth part of the show, we'll get into George Kittle, his comments on Brock Purdy, how Brock Purdy has looked so far here in the offseason. And I'll give my thoughts on that. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about Case Keenum, and his comments on Stephon Diggs. So a couple of 49ers topics, a couple of Texans topics here on the show for today. So that's the rundown. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing Brandon Aiyuk meeting with the 49ers. So this news broke yesterday, and they had a meeting. There's no updates as of right now, and I was checking before I hopped on here today in case there was anything. But, so Aiyuk is reportedly met with the 49ers to discuss the current contract situation. The 49ers, they want to bring Aiyuk back. Now, if you remember, we talked about the social media post from last week where he was on FaceTime with Jaden Daniels, the rookie quarterback for the Commanders, and he basically said, they don't want me, and they, meaning the 49ers, and I know there was a clip of Adam Schefter out there, and he said how, the 49ers do want Aiyuk, just not at the price that he wants, which I said the same thing on the show here last week. Now, they were gearing up to give him a contract, and it looked like things were, it's kind of been back and forth this whole offseason, but what's made it tougher now is that all of these other wide receivers have gotten paid. Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins. All of these guys have gotten new deals, and Aiyuk wants that kind of money. But the 49ers, they may not be willing to give him such a big number. They want to give him a number that's closer to what they desire. And Aiyuk is seeking an extension around $30 million annually. Again, he's set to make a little over $14 million this current season under his fifth-year option. So that's where we're kind of at. And maybe, I saw that maybe he wanted this meeting just to clear the air and also maybe to try to get closer, closer to a number that they could both agree upon. But right now, there's no current updates. And, I was listening to a little bit of, the Rich Eisen show. He had Daniel Jeremiah on. And, they were just kind of talking about, the receiving core for the Niners and how, it'd be very beneficial to have both Brandon Aiyuk and Ricky Pearsall in the same offense because, he kind of talked about Deebo Samuel and how Deebo Samuel is a dynamic playmaker, but not the best route runner. And that's where, Aiyuk is very valuable and Pearsall as well. They're both very good route runners. And Deebo Samuel is a very versatile player. They line him up in the backfield. But that was just something that I thought was interesting. Because, right now it looks like Aiyuk might not be on the 49ers the way things are going. Again, we're still, ways away from the start of the season, so things can change. But I said this too, and I'll probably talk about this again a little bit later when we go over Brock Purdy and the things George Kittle had to say about him. But Brandon Aiyuk is a main component of this offense. And, him and Brock Purdy really developed a strong connection last year. Aiyuk had a solid season. And you don't want to lose that because we saw how the 49ers offense was when some players went down. It wasn't the same. And losing a player like Aiyuk, although can he be replaced? I think the 49ers are a smart enough organization where they could figure it out. They drafted Ricky Pearsall, but is Ricky Pearsall going to, be productive right off the bat to start the season? We'll have to wait and see. So, that's just something that, and I've said that a lot, is, if you lose Aiyuk, it's going to hurt the offense. So you want to try to bring him back. But, again, if they can't bring him back and they got to end up trading him, then it is what it is at that point. So, but the 49ers do want to bring him back. It's just they don't want to bring him back at the price that he is asking for, which, that happens. So there's several different scenarios with this situation on how this is going to play out. They could end up giving him a long-term deal that he agrees upon. They can't come to an agreement. He holds out, and then they end up trading him. There's different things that can happen here, and we just got to keep playing the waiting game. And this is the last week before, I go away, so maybe something happens while I'm away. I'm hoping something does, so it gives, us something else to talk about. But, these updates, these social media posts and now a meeting, well, they're really, at least when I was checking, there wasn't any updates on what happened in this meeting. Did he walk away with it? Well, I think if he would have walked away with the contract, we would have heard about it by now. But this is going to continue as we get closer to the regular season. And we'll see what happens. But the way it is right now, I'm leaning towards he might end up getting traded before the season and just not playing for the 49ers. That's at least the way it looks. Now, that doesn't mean that that's going to happen, but that's just the way it is at the moment. And like I said, the 49ers, they do want him back, but ultimately, if it's going to cost them too much, then they might have to move off of him. And I did see something that, I saw a couple things. One, I did discuss this on a previous show, but the 49ers were taking calls on Aiyuk and Deebo. One of those teams, I think, I saw that was the Commanders, which was interesting. And then the other thing, too, is that Aiyuk wants to stay. His number one priority is, I want to stay with the 49ers, but he did say that he's fine with going somewhere else if that means, he's going to get paid. So that's another little thing that I saw as well. But yeah, it's just, the 49ers is one of the best spots to be in. There's very few teams that are better than this team right now. One of them is the team that won the Super Bowl, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. But, why would you... again, you want to get paid. But, you go somewhere else, you might not have an opportunity to get back to the Super Bowl, depending on where you go. Because like I said, there's very few teams that are better than the 49ers. Like I said, the Chiefs, you could throw the Ravens in there as well, because, the Ravens, they dominated against the 49ers on Christmas. But, it's a different year now. But, and the Lions almost beat them. But I'd probably, right now I still rank the 49ers as the top team in the NFC. But, yeah, there's very few teams that are better than the Niners. So yeah, you can go and get your money, but you might not be in the best situation. Depends on where you go. So, again, we just got to keep playing the waiting game here. It's just, but this was a small thing that happened. Nothing has happened at the moment, so we just got to continue to play that waiting game until something does actually happen. But as of right now, there's no news. I was trying to see if there was maybe some more details on what could have happened with this meeting, but I didn't really seem to find anything right before I went live here today. So just got to keep playing the waiting game. So, but hopefully they could try to meet in the middle, because like I said, Aiyuk is a very important part of this offense, and they end up losing him. It's gonna be tough on the 49ers. At least I think in the early going. You got to get Pearsall acclimated. You still got Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, of course, and George Kittle, but Aiyuk's a big part of what they do, and you lose that, and that's definitely going to hurt your offense to an extent. So we'll have to wait and see, but let me know what you guys think about the situation here. Again, I've probably said this, but do you guys think that he will stay with the 49ers, they'll get a long-term deal agreed upon, or is he going elsewhere and getting paid elsewhere before the 2024 season? Let me know in the comments, because it's different than the T. Higgins situation, because T. Higgins signed the franchise tag. He's at least going to play under that for the 2024 season, but after that, we'll see. Probably going to end up going elsewhere. But with this, it seems like, it's either he's playing with the 49ers in 2024, Brandon Aiyuk, or he's playing elsewhere in 2024. At least that's what it seems to me. So, but let me know what you guys think about the Brandon Aiyuk situation. So we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we'll go over the Houston Texans schedule. I'll give you my early win-loss predictions for them. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows with 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to continue our schedule breakdowns. And today we will be talking about the Houston Texans schedule. So let's get into that. So we got to change a couple things here, of course. So the Texans, they went 10-7 last season, exceeded expectations, won the AFC South, and then won a playoff game against the Cleveland Browns. Did lose to the Ravens in the divisional round, but this year expectations are higher. I expect this team to be very good in 2024. Right now, look at them as the favorites to win the AFC South once again. So let's go over their schedule here. They start off with the Colts. Now, the Texans, they ended the Colts season last year, and that was with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. He did a nice job filling in for Anthony Richardson when he went down earlier in the season. So we get Anthony Richardson against C.J.Stroud right off the bat. And, you know, I think this is going to be a tough game for the Texans. I think the Colts are going to be a good team. I feel like this game could definitely go either way. And we get to see, you know, how Stephon Diggs is with the Texans. Of course, they also brought in Joe Mixon as well. Danielle Hunter on the defensive side of the ball. So, I don't know. I feel like I could see this, like I said, I could see this game going either way. But I'm going to say, I'll say the Texans get the win here. I'm going to say the Colts and the Texans, they do split. So I'm going to say the Colts end up winning the game here to start out. But like I said, could go either way. Then in week 2, this is an exciting game. This is actually the Hall of Fame game, Bears and the Texans, but now we get it on Sunday night here in week 2. Bears got their rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams. Another team, love the moves that they made this offseason. I think this team can definitely compete for a playoff spot. But I think because the Texans are at home, I like the Texans in this spot. So I'm going to say they win and they get back on track and even it out at 1-1. Then they take on a Vikings team. Now, in the production meeting, because I did go over the Vikings schedule, but I had to remind myself the kind of schedule that they have. So they play the Giants week 1, but after that they play the Texans, the 49ers. They have like a gauntlet of a schedule after the Giants from like week 2 to week 6. So they could start off 0-6 to start the season. And it's funny because the game against the Giants is a game I actually think the Giants can win. So, but yeah, that was just something that we talked about yesterday. But here, yeah, I like the Texans in this spot. I think they got the better quarterback. Depending on whether it's Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy, it doesn't matter. I think the Texans should get the win here. And also, it's a Danielle Hunter coming home party. So, and then on the other side, you got Jonathan Grenard on the Vikings. So, those two guys will be going at it against their former teams. But, yeah, I like the Texans in that spot. Then we got the Jaguars. Now, the Texans early on in the season, they won by a few scores in Jacksonville, and then the Jags, they won in Houston. And at that point, I thought, they were 8-3, I believe, 8-3, 8-4. I thought at that point, the division was wrapped up. But that was not the case, because then the Jaguars, they went in a free fall, and the Texans got hot, made the playoffs. So the Jags are looking to redeem themselves. And I feel like this is... I think the Jags could split with the Texans. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's going to be a sweep. I think there's going to be another split here. I'm going to say the Texans do get the win here. So I'll give them the win. But like I said, I think I'm going to say they split with the Jags as well. Then they take on the Bills. Stephon Diggs going up against his former team. Got Josh Allen coming in. I think this has a potential to be a really good game. I think, again, with the Texans being at home, I lean more towards them. Because I also do have some question marks with the Bills receiving core, even though I think they're going to be able to work it out because they have Josh Allen. And, I think they're going to lean on James Cook as well. But, again, I'm going to lean towards the Texans. I'm going to say the Texans get the win here. Then in week 6, they take on the Patriots. And the Patriots have a good defense still. It's just the offense is where my concerns kind of lie. So, I'm going to lean towards taking the Texans here. Because, again, if you remember, now it's a new year, but the Texans did lose to the Panthers last year. Now, that's why I brought up the fact that the Patriots have a good defense. Like, maybe the Patriots, force some turnovers. C.J.Stroud has an off game. Maybe they pull off an upset. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Texans are going to get the win here as well. Then they take on the Packers. And I think I did have them beating the Packers when I did the Packers schedule. But this game could go either way. And I have a problem with this game because it's at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock Eastern time. It's an early window game. This game should be moved to the afternoon or flexed into Sunday night. And I don't know. I'm not a big expert on the flexing rules when it comes to the TV networks. So I don't know if that applies with this week. But yeah, this game should be a later window. So I don't know why, but maybe they end up moving it. Who knows? I think I did say the Texans would upset the Packers. I don't know if you want to call it an upset, but the Texans would beat the Packers in Lambeau. So, and then I said they would split with the Colts. So I'd give the Texans the win there. The Jets, I mean that one could go either way. I would give the. I forget if I said the Jets would beat them or not, because the Jets did win last year when they had Zach Wilson. So that's another game that I think could go either way if the Jets are clicking on all cylinders. Their offense is playing well, the defense. Then they got the Lions right after that. So yeah, this stretch from week 7 to week 11 is tough. Then they got the Lions at home. Two high-powered offenses going at it. That's another game they could lose. So I think they'll split between the Jets and the Lions. They'll win one and they'll lose one. Then against the Cowboys, I like the Texans. I think they're the better team here. I mean, the Cowboys are at home, although this game is both teams playing Texas, but I think I'd lean towards the Texans here. Then against the Titans, I think the Texans should win the Week 12 matchup. Said they would split with the Jags. The Dolphins game is interesting. And again, two high-powered offenses going at it. I think with the Texans being at home, I like them, so I'll give them the win there. Against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, get to see C.J.Stroud against Patrick Mahomes for the first time. I'm going to say that's a loss. And then against the Ravens, they got the Ravens at home this time. So you know what? I'm gonna say the Texans actually drop that one as well, and then they take on the Titans again, and I'm gonna say they win that one. So I had them losing against the Chiefs, the Ravens, splitting with the Jags, splitting with the Colts, and then losing one of the Lions or the Jets game from week 9 and between week 9 and week 10. So it's 12-5. I think that's doable. And again, it might not be those exact losses. It might be in other games. But yeah, I think 12-5 is fair. That's a 2-game improvement from last season. I think that's fair. Like I said, I mean, it could be in different games. They could lose to the Cowboys. They could win against both the Jets and the Lions. They could sweep the Colts and lose to the Packers. I mean, but 12-5, I think that's doable for them. I think in year 2 they're going to be even better. You got Stephon Diggs now there. The defense hopefully is better with some of the moves they made there. So yeah, I think that's fair. So we'll see if they live up to it. Again, the expectations are higher, but I feel like with the coach and the quarterback, I feel like those high expectations, I don't think it's going to faze them. I think they're going to be ready for it. But like I say, only time will tell. There are some games that I'm really looking forward to on the schedule, though. When they take on the Chiefs, the Ravens, they take on the Bills as well. Taking on Jordan Love and C.J.Stroud, their playoff debuts, they basically had like the same stats. Although like the passing yards were like slightly different. Like one of them had like 274, the other had 272, whatever it was. But their playoff debuts were nearly identical. And then you also have, so that's a game I'm looking forward to. Then you also have, against the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a Thursday night game, so looking forward to that. And then you got the Lions as well, two high-powered offenses. The Dolphins game is, too. That's an exciting game. I feel like, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, that offense led by Tua, that could be a good game. So, and then you got the games in their own division. I kind of disrespected the Titans because I said that the Texans would split with the Jags and the Colts, but I had them sweeping the Titans. But, those games could be fun as well. Then the Week 2 matchup. Yeah, I basically said every single game on the schedule. The only game is, I think really the only game that I didn't say was, or the only two games, probably the Patriots when they play the Patriots in Foxborough, and then, the Vikings. But, you got Stephon Diggs going back to Minnesota. So, and I think that's the first time since he was traded from Minnesota to Buffalo. So he'll be going back there for the first time. And, so, there's a lot of intriguing matchups on the Texans schedule. So, I said 12-5. Let me know what you guys think. How many games do you think the Texans will win in 2024? So, before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will discuss some comments made by Cam Newton on who is the real face of the NFL, whether either it's Lamar Jackson or is it Patrick Mahomes. Well, based off of what he said. We'll talk about what he said. I'll give you my thoughts on it when we come back from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about some comments made by Cam Newton on who the face of the NFL is. And he talked about Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. So I kind of just wanted to go over what he had to say, give you my thoughts. So let's get into that. So Cam Newton. Now, Cam Newton has done a lot of talking on his podcast. He had some comments about Brock Purdy. So he has done a lot of talking on this podcast, and it's made, some headlines. And most recently, he talked about, who he thinks the face of the NFL is. Now, it's not really shocking as to what he said, but, it made some headlines, so I just wanted to go over it. So this is what he had to say. In modern day, if somebody were to say who's the face of the NFL right now, he said Patrick Mahomes. He said, for as great as Lamar Jackson is and has been, there's never been a point in time where somebody has dominated the MVP race and polls of unanimous winner like Lamar Jackson has. But it's still Patrick Mahomes because of one reason, and one reason only. 3 Super Bowl rings. There's never a moment in time where you can be a face of a league without championship rings. And even if you do have championship rings, we go off to another discussion point. Are you marketable? And then he also said, he brought up when he won the MVP back in 2015. He said, when I won the MVP back in 2015, me still being voted the number 1 player by my peers, Tom Brady was still the face of the league. I'd also say J.J. Watt was the face of the league too for some time from a non-quarterback position. And even really Drew Brees was a golden boy. I'd also put Aaron Rodgers in there as well, but that's just me. And then I know that Lamar Jackson, he didn't really he didn't really seem concerned about it with being the NFL's most popular player. His focus is on getting the Super Bowl himself. So I feel like Lamar has that mentality where those kinds of things don't bother him. Like, I know I did do a segment earlier. I think it was when the schedule came out and they were opening up against the Chiefs, and he was asked a ton of questions about hey, this is a team that has your number, and they beat you in the playoffs last year, and he kind of just ignored it. He said it's another game, it's one game towards our ultimate goal of getting a Super Bowl. So stuff like that doesn't seem. I mean, I feel like that's a little different. I feel like in the back of his mind, it does kind of bother him that the Chiefs kind of keep winning against the Ravens. But this, I mean, I don't think he really cares. And I mean, I would agree with Cam Newton. I think most people would agree with Cam Newton that Patrick Mahomes is the face of the NFL right now, because of the success that he's had in a short amount of time. Became a starter in 2018 and has been in the AFC Championship game every single year that he's been the starter for the Chiefs, which is impressive. And not only that, 3 Super Bowls on top of that, and a couple of MVPs as well. And Lamar Jackson has a couple of MVPs. But the problem is the playoff success, or the lack thereof. And last year, it looked like it could have been the Ravens' year because they were very good, and they're still going to be good. They could be even better because, now you added Derrick Henry to the backfield. But last year could have been their year. The Chiefs, their offense, they were struggling all year, but the Chiefs made it to the AFC Championship game, and they ended up winning. And getting past the Ravens, winning the Super Bowl against the 49ers. And, again, Lamar Jackson loses to Patrick Mahomes. So, I mean, right now, and yesterday I brought up, I talked about the Manning-Brady rivalry and how we don't really have that at the moment. Because you got Patrick Mahomes who has played a few guys a handful of times, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. But, I mean, the closest right now I would say is Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes is like that next rivalry, because Joe Burrow has beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs to get to a Super Bowl. And they've played in 2 AFC Championship games against each other. But, Josh Allen has gotten the better of Mahomes in the regular season, but it's been different in the postseason. That's when the Chiefs have, they're 3-0. Patrick Mahomes is 3-0 against Josh Allen in the postseason. And then, now one of them was an AFC Championship game, but, again, Mahomes wins in the playoffs. And then you got Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson only has 1 win against Mahomes, and I've brought that win up numerous times. And the Chiefs should have won that game. The Chiefs kind of gave away that game to the Ravens. Now, give the Ravens credit. They took advantage of the Chiefs' mistakes, and they ended up winning. But Lamar Jackson could be winless against Patrick Mahomes right now. So, I mean, we still got a long way to go. I mean, these guys got their whole careers ahead of them, so maybe one of these guys really takes this, and we end up getting that next Manning versus Brady, which I think right now, like I said, I would lean towards it being Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. And we don't necessarily need it. I think you do need it, but I don't think people are begging for that. I think if we do get something like that, that's a plus, but that's just me. So, but yeah, I think I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be the face of the league for as long as he's playing. Because he's just right now, he's built up his legacy where he is just so far ahead of everybody else that's playing right now. And the quarterbacks that have won, another thing I brought up, the quarterbacks that have won in his era are guys from the last era. Tom Brady, winning 2. One with the Patriots, one with the Buccaneers, and then you have Matthew Stafford winning with the Rams a few years ago. None of these other guys that, are playing in the Mahomes era now, they haven't done it. Now, that's not to say that 2024 is not the year for it. Absolutely could be. But we're still kind of playing the waiting game on who that's going to be. I think right now, and he concerns me because of his injuries, but I think Joe Burrow is that guy. I think Joe Burrow is the guy to get it done because he's made it to a Super Bowl. And like I said, he's been able to knock off Patrick Mahomes. But he's got to stay healthy. If he doesn't stay healthy, then this conversation doesn't mean anything. And Lamar Jackson, he's going to have something to say about it. Because, again, I think the Ravens are still going to be very good. I think most of us, pretty much all of us, do agree on that. So they're going to be battling it out for the division. You got another team that we just talked about, the Houston Texans. They're going to want to make a statement because they're going to be playing all the first-place teams from last year. They're taking on the Bills and the Ravens and the Chiefs later in the season, like we just went over. So they're going to have something to say about it. And, the Bills, I know they did lose some pieces. They don't have Stephon Diggs anymore, but you still got Josh Allen. So, those are the teams right now. And you know what? Well, I shouldn't just say that. You also got, if Aaron Rodgers is right and this Jets team was able to put it together this year, they could be a problem. You got the Dolphins with their high-powered. There's a lot of teams in the AFC, but who's going to be the one to step up and take down Patrick Mahomes and prevent the Chiefs from three-peating? I mean, I said it was the Bengals just because they've done it before, but we just got to hope that Joe Burrow stays healthy. So, but we got ways to go, and the Chiefs got better with their receiving core. Adding Marquise Brown, drafting Xavier Worthy. They improved at a position that was lacking last year. And if you get Travis Kelce healthy for this season, for the start of the season, that's another problem. Because he looked like the Travis Kelce of old in the postseason. And then, you got a solid offensive line and you got a good running game. So, and then backed by a very good defense. So the Chiefs they're not going to be struggling through the regular season like they did last year. I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to be crisp, and those explosive plays that were kind of missed, that have kind of been missed the last couple of years, those are going to be back. Mahomes is going to be airing it out more. Because you got Marquise Brown, that's a deep ball guy. And it's the same thing with Xavier Worthy. So, Chiefs offense is going to be back to, how it was. I mean, not exactly how it was with Tyreek Hill, but in some way, it's going to be like that. So, but, Yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about what we talked about. Who do you think is the face of the NFL right now? I mean, it is Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion. So I'm with that with Cam. And it is no disrespect to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has been unbelievable. He's one of the best players in the NFL in general. And you see the impact that he has. He's gotten better as a passer. But, like the last couple of years, before last year, when he got hurt late in the season, that really affected the Ravens and what they were able to do. They still made the playoffs despite his injury the year before, and Tyler Huntley started the playoff game. But, if Lamar plays against the Bengals, maybe they win. And then the year before that, they were still in the mix for the playoffs, but they ended up missing out on it. Still had a chance, I think, in the last game of the season, and that was the year the Steelers made it, in Big Ben's final year. But, yeah, it's just with Lamar Jackson fully healthy, the defense and the way it was last year, it was a very good team. And they're looking to get back to the AFC Championship game and getting it done, getting past whoever they got to go against. If they got to go against the Chiefs, maybe they can do it and get back to the Super Bowl. Because I think if they got past the Chiefs, I think they were going to beat the Niners. I think we were going to. I don't know if we would have saw a repeat of what we saw on Christmas, but I think the Ravens, if they got past the Chiefs, they might have won the whole thing. But it didn't happen. So, and, they had a golden opportunity because they were the number 1 seed. They were at home, but they couldn't get it done. So, but that's my thoughts on it. We'll put a bow on this segment here. So we're going to take our next break here. And then when we come back, we'll discuss George Kittle's comments on Brock Purdy, his growth. We'll talk about it. So more 49ers stuff when we return from our third break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about some comments made by George Kittle on Brock Purdy, how he looks right now before the 2024 season. So we'll get into that, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. But we do have a lot of people in the chat, as I'm seeing here. The chat's really loaded up. So if you guys got any comments, anything you want to ask me, be much appreciated, just so, can interact with the viewers here. Because that's what I like to do. So if anybody has any comments, please don't hesitate. But yeah, I wanted to go over what George Kittle had to say. So let's get into that. And talking about Brock Purdy, he said he looks like that guy, or he looks like the guy, which is really nice. He's in the building every day and is the same guy every single day, consistent. He's incredibly competitive. It's fun seeing him yell at the guys when they don't hit their route depth or have the wrong landmark. He also said, and then also a former teammate of Brock Purdy also had some comments as well. Charlie Warner said, super proud of Brock. He handled everything like a pro, coming in, starting as the third string from where he started and how he showed up every day, just continuing being a pro and ready for his opportunity. And when he got it, everyone knows he took advantage of it, and he's been crushing it. And Kyle Shanahan also said Brock was so good right away. With every rep he got, he was always the same, and he only got a couple of them. So it was easy for me to say because in his few reps, he was the best. And Kittle also said he's taking control of the offense and making it his. It's Kyle's, and Kyle is calling the plays, but Brock is getting guys to do what he wants them to do, which is really fun to see. So, that's encouraging to hear. And, Brock Purdy is someone that has gotten a lot of, criticism at times because, you look at the 49ers and who they have on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, it's hard for a quarterback not to succeed in that. But, you got to be careful when you say, well, anybody could do that. You could put anybody in that system and they'll do well. I'm not really too sure about that. I don't think, if Brock Purdy got hurt, before the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, and they had to put in Josh Johnson, and Josh Johnson didn't get hurt. I don't think Josh Johnson is taking the 49ers all the way to the championship game. Because you got to remember, too, Trey Lance started the year. Then Garoppolo had to come in because Trey Lance got hurt. Then Garoppolo gets hurt, and then Brock Purdy gets his opportunity. Well, now if Brock Purdy gets hurt, well, they got to put somebody in, and it would have been Josh Johnson. He would have been the next man up. And I don't think he would have been able to do what Brock Purdy did. So we can't really say that anybody could step into that situation and play at that level. And I think you also got to look at the fact that, Brock Purdy was the last pick in the draft. Was not part of the 49ers' long-term plan. I think he was going to be a guy that was going to be on the team, but, maybe he was never going to get an opportunity. But then you had, like I said, Trey Lance get hurt, Garoppolo get hurt. He took over, played really well, and then last year, he was even better. Got them to the Super Bowl. Now, there was a rough patch in the middle of the season, and I did bring up how, injuries played a role in that. No Deebo Samuel and no Trent Williams as well, and the offense struggled. They lost 3 games in a row. But then they got right, made it to the Super Bowl, and they had a chance to win it, but came up a little bit short. So we'll see how Brock Purdy is in year 3. I guess year 2 is being the full-time starter because, 22, he, started playing towards the end of that season. But, so year 3. And, teams, become more familiar with you and you're going to have to make adjustments. And he's going to be able to do that. I think we saw how Brock Purdy handled adversity. Being down against the Packers, being down big against the Lions in the NFC Championship game, that didn't faze him. Now, the 49ers did cash in on some Lions mistakes. Understand that. But, he could have folded. He could have folded, and the 49ers could have lost, and it would have been a disappointing end to their season. It still was. It still ended up being that in the Super Bowl. But they came back. And you got to give him credit there. For it, because he did make some big plays. And I thought he played well in the Super Bowl, too. I know people expected him to do a little bit more. And I would not necessarily disagree with that. But I thought he played good enough where the 49ers should have won the game. But they didn't. Brock Purdy and Patrick Mahomes, it's Brock Purdy's played very well, but Patrick Mahomes is the standard. And it's kind of interesting ranking Brock Purdy amongst the quarterbacks. Because last year, he played with like a top 10 quarterback. But some people will say, again, it's because of the talent around him. But you could also say the same thing with Tua. Tua, look at the talent that he has around him. And, I'm not a big, I'm not high on Tua, but Tua had a good year last year. But then again, Brock Purdy was able to bring his team to an NFC Championship game. Now, again, football is also a team sport, but Brock Purdy's been to two championship games in the Super Bowl. He's got to play a role in that. So, I think also, getting Christian McCaffrey, that's played a huge role as well. He's been unbelievable since the Niners got him. I mean, the playmakers, they have a lot to do with that. The defense as well. The 49ers are a well-run organization. It's just they have not been able to win the big game. And you look at the conference, the NFC as a whole, it's going to be better. The Lions are not going anywhere. The Packers are going to be good. The Eagles are going to be really good, in my opinion. So it's going to be tough. Those teams are not going anywhere. So it's on the 49ers to, try to get that 1 seed again. And maybe they have to go on the road in the playoffs, but get that home field. Try to knock off these teams once again and try to get back there and do it again. Because they are a team that has gotten so close so many times. And you want to see this group of players win a championship. I've said it all along. I think this group definitely deserves to win a championship. But it's they got to do it. And they've gotten very close. But the 2 times that they've been able to make it to the Super Bowl, they've gone up against that team and that quarterback. So we'll see what happens this year. Although when I did go over the 49ers schedule, they got a very tough schedule. So, Brock Purdy, you go out there and you play really well with that schedule that you got. I mean, and you're the reason why your team wins. And you're playing well. I mean, I don't think there should be any complaints. But we'll have to see. And the other thing, too, is with Brandon Aiyuk. Because I talked about it a little bit before. You lose Brandon Aiyuk, there's gonna be some problems early on in the season if he's not there. And not to say that he's not replaceable, because I think he is. And they might have drafted his replacement with Ricky Pearsall. But the 49ers do prefer that they keep all those guys together. But if not, Pearsall is going to take on a bigger role. And early on in the season could be a problem. Just trying to, him trying to get acclimated to everything, it might take a little bit. Because we've seen that, some rookie receivers, they got to get their feet wet, and then, we get towards the middle of the season, second half of the year, and then they really start to get it going. Kind of like with Rashee Rice last year with the Chiefs. Did have some good games early on, but towards the end of the year, he was playing really well. Was a big factor for the Chiefs down the stretch. So, the 49ers, they're hoping that they got their full array of weapons, plus Ricky Pearsall now in the fold, and they want to try to get back to the Super Bowl. But they do have a tough schedule. We'll see what Brock Purdy is really made of, with the schedule that they got. But either way, the 49ers are still going to are going to have a good record, going to make the playoffs. And we go from there. But, if they don't have Brandon Aiyuk, again, that's another way to see, all right, one of your top weapons is no longer there. How are you going to respond to that? And I think he's another guy where I don't really see, he doesn't seem like a guy that's going to get rattled. Doesn't seem like that. So, and I want to, see him continue to succeed. And again, try to lead this group to a championship because they deserve it. And I think he's another guy that deserves it because, you got to love the story. I think people get sick of hearing it. I feel like people just get sick of hearing anything, honestly. Any kind of storyline that they hear more than once, they're just like, enough, get this out of my face. I don't want to hear about it anymore. But I think he's another guy that deserves to, get a ring. And we'll see if the 49ers can do it. It's going to be tough. It's tough for any team to go out there and win a championship. I know the Chiefs have done it the last 2 years, but, it's hard to get back to that point. So, we'll see what they end up doing, but it looks like, George Kittle and former teammates, Kyle Shanahan, they are all they're all speaking very positively on their quarterback, and that's that's something that's encouraging for Niners fans. As Purdy's looking to do even better in 2024. So that's pretty much it on this topic. So we're going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we'll talk about some comments made by Case Keenum on Stefon Diggs as they reunite once again now in Houston. So I'll talk about what he had to say when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about some comments made by Case Keenum on Stefon Diggs. Of course, these guys were part of the Minneapolis Miracle, back in 2017, which, can't believe how fast time flies with that, because, it felt like yesterday. Because I remember with that play, my uncle said, right before it, he said, man, the Vikings really need a miracle here. And then literally right after he said that, and you might think I'm, spewing out garbage here, but no, this actually did happen. He said they really need a miracle here. And then right after he said that, Keenum hit Diggs for the touchdown, which was so funny that happened. But yeah, that was a long time ago. And since then, Case Keenum was bouncing around even before that, but it looked like he, maybe found a home with the Vikings at the time. But they ended up moving off of him, and he went to... Where did he go after that? Oh, no, he went to Denver. Then he went to Washington the following year, but he went to Denver after that. And that's when the Vikings got Kirk Cousins. And then Stefon Diggs, 2019 was his last season with the Vikings. He went to the Bills, of course. They reunited there. And now they're in Houston together. And Case Keenum, I think this is his... Is this his third time with the Texans? Because he was with the Texans, if you remember, he had his debut... I think his debut was on Sunday night against the Colts back in 2013. And he threw a couple of touchdown passes to Andre Johnson. This was against the Andrew Luck Colts. Yeah, he, that was, they ended up losing the game. The Colts came back, but that was the first time we ever really saw Case Keenum. And then, then he's kind of bounced around. He was with the Rams, he was with the Vikings, he was with Denver, was with Washington, was with Cleveland for a couple years, then was with Buffalo last year, and now he's with Houston. Actually, no, 2022 he was with Buffalo. Last year he was with Houston. So this was his second time with Houston. So yeah, once again reunited with Stefon Diggs, and this is what he had to say about Diggs. He said, "Yeah, it's really cool to get back out there and see Stefon on the practice field and to watch him absolutely do some dirty things on some routes that I haven't seen anybody be able to do. He's a dynamic player, and he hasn't lost a step. If anything, he's gotten more savviness and can put some extra sauce on some routes when he needs to and win. He's done a great job of continuing to build his craft and work his tools, his tool set. And I'm excited to see what he can do in the fall. And I just want to make sure. I think that was... Oh, yeah. He also said, I think he's hungry. There was obviously a lot of success, and guys are very proud of what we were able to do and what he was able to do. There's still some meat on the bone. We still want to get after it. We want to finish with the confetti falling down and winning the last one. Oh, so he was kind of, just talking about Diggs and, the Texans as a whole from last season. But, yeah, I mean, I've talked about Diggs, and, when the trade first happened, and really just anytime I've talked about Diggs or anything, pertaining to him and stuff that went on with him and Josh Allen, I don't think there are people that think that Stephon Diggs is washed. And I feel like that's kind of strong. I don't think he's washed. I think he's still got some good years left. I do agree that, the Bills, maybe weren't, he wasn't the focal point of the Bills' offense. Josh Allen wasn't constantly throwing to Diggs, like he had been. Because they did, they made the change with the offensive coordinator. They got rid of Ken Dorsey, and they brought in Joe Brady, and they ran the ball a lot more. But I know that, we go back to the playoff game against the Chiefs, and Josh Allen threw that ball up into the stratosphere, and Diggs didn't come down with it. And if he caught that kind of changed the complexion of the game, but, that ended up not happening. People point to whenever Diggs, at times when Diggs would get opportunities, he would drop passes, and, that's where people say, well, he's washed. I don't think so. Like I said, I think he's still got some good years left. And I think he's in a good spot with the Texans. But there is a common denominator, though. He wanted out of Minnesota, goes to the Bills, and then, gets traded from the Bills to Houston now. So what's going to happen now that he's in Houston? Because, and I've said this, there are a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. Because you got Diggs, of course. But you also have Nico Collins, who had a big year last year that got paid. Tank Dell coming back from injury. Him and C.J.Stroud had a nice connection before he got hurt. Dalton Schultz started playing really well. Him and Stroud started getting on the same page in the, middle part of the season, second half of the year, around that time. And, they're going to try to run the football a little bit with Joe Mixon. So, Stephon Diggs is not going to be the focal point in this offense. He doesn't have to be the guy. But is he going to be okay with that? I think if the Texans, win the whole thing, I mean, you got to throw, the ego out the window a little bit and say, well, we just won the Super Bowl. But yeah, I'm curious to see how. I mean, that's way down the line. But, early part of the season, as we go through the season, if Diggs is not, putting up big numbers certain games and other guys are, how is he gonna respond to that? Even if the Texans are winning. Is there gonna be some, cryptic social media posts about him not getting the ball enough? If that's the case, again, this is all speculation, but I could see that happening. So, I mean, only time will tell with that. But yeah, I'm kind of with. I mean, Case Keenum is seeing Stephon Diggs in practice. I don't think he's lying when he's saying that Stephon Diggs can still run routes at a high level. He can still play at a high level in general. I think Diggs is going to go out there and he's going to have a good year. I don't know if he's going to put up the numbers like he did in Buffalo because, again, you're playing in a loaded offense. You got guys that, C.J.Stroud's going to be spreading the ball around. But I think Diggs will go out there, have a good year, and I think he'll show that he isn't washed. He just might not put up the same numbers that he did in Buffalo. But But like I've said, I'm really excited about what this Texans offense is going to look like. And I went over their schedule earlier, of course. I mean, there's a lot of intriguing matchups on their schedule. Diggs is going to be going up against the Vikings. He's going to be going up against the Bills. And I mean, he's gonna have some good games. But if there are games where he's not really getting involved, and he lays a dud for you in fantasy and only puts up like 30 yards receiving. I mean, I think if that happens frequently, that's going to be a problem for him. But I mean, here or there, like a couple games where he doesn't have a big one. I mean, I don't think that should be a big deal. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting how Stroud tries to get all these guys involved. Because there's plenty of weapons on this team besides Diggs. But that's why this is a good spot for him, because there's a threat everywhere. And that's what's going to make this Texans offense really dangerous in 2024. So let me know what you guys think, though, about what Case Keenum had to say. How do you guys feel about Stephon Diggs? Do you think that he is washed? Do you think he's not washed? I mean, yeah, I think washed, like, that's very strong. I don't think he's washed. But, yeah, I like I said, I think he'll be good with Houston, of course. Yeah, we'll see how he fits into this offense. So, and I've talked about how I feel about the Texans. They're going to be very good. So, but yeah, that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. If anybody has any last minute comments before we wrap up here, because we got 61 people in the chat. I mean, if you got any last minute remarks before I sign off here, we got a couple minutes here. So if anybody has anything that they want to discuss quickly before we wrap up today, just let me know. Still got a little bit of time here, but at least with the segment here, that's what I got. I will be in attendance for the I'll make this little announcement. I'll be in attendance for the Subway Series game tonight between the Yankees and the Mets. One team's playing really well, the other team is not, and it's not what you would think based on the records. But yeah, should be an interesting game tonight. So looking forward to that. And also the Stanley Cup did wrap up last night. The Panthers, despite blowing a 3-0 lead, they did end up defeating the Oilers 2-1. So they get that Stanley Cup. So that turned out to be a good Stanley Cup final. Even though at one point the series was 3-0. And, at least, the Stanley Cup final ended up being a good series. Went 7 games. And the game last night was a good game. Got to watch a little bit of it while I was working. But, yeah, so that hockey's done. And, yeah, it's really, it's baseball's time now, So, and football is right around the corner. We got a little bit more to go, but yeah, right now this is baseball show, and of course, you got the WNBA with the the young players with Caitlin Clark, of course. So, but yeah, so we're gonna wrap it up here. So, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows, of course. Get their perspectives on different things. We cover basically every sport, so make sure to check out all the other shows they are going on throughout the day. So, yeah, with that is all the time that we have for today. So, once again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.